Hey everybody, video here for you today. Some ancient history coming from the state of Wisconsin. Been watching the TV over the last few days. My home city of Minneapolis, and pretty stunned what I see there. And I think I'll save that for another time and place. Today we're going down to Madison, Wisconsin. Whole set of mounds down here. This whole area around Madison was filled with mounds, effigy mounds, earthworks. There is one spot I'm going to concentrate on near McFarland here. But let's just show a map of this whole area here. Here's a look at the whole Madison area. These lakes were filled with ancient sites here. The red indicates mound groups that included animal shapes, animal effigies, and you get a look at some of those on the far right there. Birds, different types of animals there, but a lot of bird imagery. And then the blue indicates conical and linear mounds. These were spread out through the whole area here. Many of these sites are gone today. Let's go up and take a look at one up here. This is the Mendota Mental Health Institute up here, right up here on their property. Here's a diagram of what once existed on the shore of Lake Mendota near the hospital here. It says for 1,700 years, Native people ornamented the Yahara rivers, lakes, streams, and natural springs with the greatest variety of earthworks in the mound building region. Most were destroyed by white settlers. Still, there are more surviving mounds per acre here than anywhere else. But from this diagram of what was here originally, I believe this figure of this bird still remains on the property. That area is right down here. You can see the remains of a smaller mound right here, probably a couple of them that were probably in the form of some animal. But you see that large bird effigy here, the wings spanning quite a ways here, and the body going back into the woods. But that one looks like it's pretty much preserved very well. Other ones disappeared in this area. You can see on this diagram there are a couple smaller effigy mounds right in front of the bird. If we go over to Google Earth, you can see the remains of those right here and right here. And then if we go over to this pic right here, there is a good shot of that large bird effigy with the smaller mounds right in front of it here. Let's go down to this tiny lake here, Lake Wingra, and that name is going to come up here in a second. Let's go down to this drive. This is Edgewood Drive. Here's a look at Edgewood Drive today. Pretty densely covered in forest down here. This is the way it looked 105 years ago. Conical mounds on the right side of the road here, all the way through here. I could have talked about ancient sites in this area for a long time. We're going to talk about this site down here. This is the Wingra Stone and Ready Mix Company. Their quarry down here. Notice there's one little place down here that has not been touched. Why? Well, you got it. Earthworks, effigy mounds on top of here. And they had some legal battles here. It's a pretty interesting story. Here's a story coming from over 4 years ago. Wisconsin tribe fight City Hall over sacred burial mounds. Down here they have a pic of the quarry down here. And the one little place they haven't quarried because there is mounds on top of here. They used to be part of the Ward Mound Group. Now there is a couple effigies on top of that formation in that quarry. One is a large bird effigy shown here on some court document papers. And there is a remainder of one smaller effigy. They think it might be of a fox or something like that. Here is some of the Ward Mound Group that encompass this area. I guess just this animal figure and the bird remain on top of here. All these other ones have already been destroyed. So protection of this site is kind of a little bit too late as far as protecting all these sites up here. But many of them disappeared a long time ago. Then there was a fight just to save the few remaining ones up here. Let me just read. It says the remnants of the once extensive Ward Mound Group lie within the property owned by the Wingra Ready Mix Inc., which also does the business as Wingra Stone Company and has operated a quarry at the location since 1962. According to a state appeals court document, the mounds were identified in 1914 and came under the safeguard of the state's Burial Protection Act in 1991. 1 year after the Dane County Indian Mounds Protection Project found that the site contained a bird effigy and partial effigy of a canine near Wingra Stone's gravel pit. At the time, the company did not challenge a cataloging of the Ward Mounds as a burial site, but it did so in 2011 when it petitioned to have them removed from the state catalog, in part based on the argument that there was no evidence of human remains contained within the mounds. So their argument was there was no burials or no proof of burials up here, even though the whole ward mound group encompassed this whole area in here. There are just a few effigy mounds left on this limestone outcropping here. You can see they're quarrying here today. So just because they couldn't prove there was burials, or they didn't think that the state could prove that there was burials up here, even though burial mounds were documented here, and this was declared a sacred burial site a long time ago. And here is that map showing conical and linear mounds, as well as effigy mounds just north of Mud Lake here in this area of the quarry. It says the Wingra Stone and Ready Mix Company, a producer of stone and concrete, has for more than 2 decades mined around a 3-acre plot containing effigy mounds inside the Meyer Quarry just north of McFarland. Today, the mounds sit atop a peninsula that stretches about 50 feet above the quarry floor, but as mining has exhausted other parts of the 57-acre quarry, the company has challenged the existence of human remains at the site in an effort to prove it should be removed from the state's registry of protected burial sites. Well, what about protected ancient sites? And I guess when it's on private property, that kind of goes out the window, but these were protected somewhat. Here's a story from 2016, What's the Value of a Mound? A Current Dispute in Wisconsin. They have a video attached. Let's listen to the owner of this place explain his position.
We have been working for literally 2 decades to try and find a amenable solution to the problem we have. Our contention is that the mound does not have any human remains, and that is the key point that needs to be determined here.
In 2011 and 2013, a researcher at the University of Wisconsin Extension conducted ground penetration radar studies, neither of which identified human remains. Wingra Stone Company has proposed a variety of solutions, such as moving the land to an area where it can be enjoyed.
They're in a protected area, they're on private property, they're in an active limestone quarry, they're under federal regulation. They are not available, and we could make them available recreating, and yet that was not something that they were interested in. No one can enter this quarry, no one can go and enjoy these mounds, nobody can study them, there's no access to them. And we now have quarried around the mounds on all sides, and they literally stand in a peninsula about 50 feet above the quarry floor on all sides around them. This is what we do, and the community uses our products every day.
Shea is now looking for a legislative solution since the court process has taken over 20 years. Assembly Bill 620 would allow owners of cataloged sites to investigate those sites for human remains. If no evidence is found, the State Historical Society would have to remove the site from the state's catalog. Shea and the bill's co-authors have faced opposition from the Ho-Chunk Nation.
Now, I have no information on the ground penetrating radar work that was done up here, how thorough it was, who actually did it. But the attitude of this owner of this quarry is, well, see, no human remains, so let's just destroy this maybe 2,000-year-old ancient site. It's meaningless to us today. Just concluding here, it says the mounds at Meyer Quarry are part of the once larger Ward Mound Group, which has largely been destroyed. Wingra began operating the quarry in 1962, but the Ward mounds remained unprotected until a 1986 law gave the Historic Society the power to identify and catalog potential burial sites and their surrounding lands for preservation. Destruction of the remaining mounds was stopped when the Ward mounds were officially cataloged as a burial site in 1990. So that is a report on the Ward Mound Group. Here is a look at the ancient effigy mounds, and there was reports of burial mounds in this area at one time, but those reports are kind of lost today. But that is a video on this ancient site and how it is treated today. Go through the courts. Ancient sites are still being destroyed in America, or they're being attempted to. Seems this one was kind of preserved. A lot of sites in the area have been totally wiped out through history. That is just one of them. It seemed this story kind of went away about 2 years ago. If you have any further information on this site, please leave it below. This area has been mined for over 100 years. The current owners have had this property for 58 years. This was part of the Ward Mound Group at one time, just one of the many mound sites around the Madison area. That's just a little bit. Some more ancient America, how sites are treated today, the attitudes of people preserving these ancient sites versus commerce. Hope you thought that was informative. And you all have a very peaceful day.